Build the tools for effective advocacy with ACEC's new online course, Effective Government Engagement at the Local, State, and Federal Levels. Learn from active practitioners in the fields of advocacy, communications, and lobbying on how you can create change and stand out in today's hectic policy environment. Register today for this 5-session online course beginning March 2nd. Learn more by visiting our website at acec.org.
Welcome to the Government Affairs Update from ACEC. Today, we are taking a look at kind of a first of its kind event that our GA team ran this week called a Reverse Industry Day. And our very own Lynn Schloesser put it together with the Energy and Environment Committee, which he oversees. And it was the first time that we kind of reversed the script on firms meeting with acquisition officials at an agency. And what a reverse industry day is, it was originally pioneered by Homeland Security in 2015. And the key is to have government officials and government employees better understand the parallel action industry is taking during the government's acquisition lifecycle. The idea is to focus a discussion on the process and understanding what the industry goes through when deciding to compete for government work. And doing this kind of event is especially informative and beneficial for those in government who might not have the private sector experience or really haven't taken a close look or at their acquisition process. I want to bring Lynn into the conversation because he kind of brought this actually to existence. My understanding, Lynn, is that number one, the event was a great success, but it's just the most immediate example of a relationship that was really started many years ago and has been working up towards this. Can you tell us a little bit about why you decided to organize this and what the objective of the Reverse Industry Day was?
Well, the why is we had member interest and member investment and time and effort that was viewed as value added. Mm-hmm. Okay. And you're right. ACEC has had a Superfund hazardous waste niche of interest for decades. Yeah. And the latest iteration of that was in my time with ACEC. It started about 6 years ago, reactivating a new level of interest particularly as the community, the remediation contracting community, design engineering in our case, was in the midst of working with EPA on conversion of their acquisition system for those services. So, 5 years ago, we made an investment in a study funding Cape Probst, Superfund 2017, about the challenges and the accomplishments of the program. And got our place in the door with the program management and the highest civil service management of the Office of Land and Emergency Management, and through that built up goodwill, so to speak. Yep. And congressional recognition, because the report was used in oversight hearings and such. But then we are watching this evolution of the flip or the change in acquisition from the old, what they would have called a sort of a full service contracting method to something that's much more incremental. And the new system called Remedial Action Framework really has been a decade in the making, and it's gone through its full-fledged commitment now to that framework. But there's been a rough period of transition, discontinuity in contracting services for Superfund site remediation. Yeah. So that's what the whole idea here was to work with the agency and getting through the discontinuity and getting back to a fluid system and one that supports the program. Because ultimately, if procurement doesn't work, the program doesn't look good. So I think, we came to a meeting of minds over the last year that both the agency and the contracting community had to put their heads together to work things out. So this was the first meeting to do such a thing.
Yeah, I mean, and as anyone who works in contracting and acquisitions with the federal government knows that it is a behemoth to work with. And if you're trying to change an acquisition system, it's truly, trying to turn an aircraft carrier. I mean, it's not exactly the quickest thing to do. And a lot of the times it drags on because the civil servants at the agency generally, have been there and they're very in depth with their own acquisition process. And sometimes they get kind of into a closed feedback loop. And it's important for them to be exposed to the thoughts, ideas, and perspectives of the people who actually have to engage within that acquisition process to get contracts on the move and getting work started and not stopped arbitrarily because they're shifting to a different acquisition system. My understanding is you had a really good turnout, at least for this event. I believe you had about 187 or so people turn up. What was the general takeaway that you heard from EPA on this? What did they find it beneficial?
Well, I haven't had, it was only yesterday, right?
Yes, exactly. I'm not sure if they got back to you. This is really hot off the press. I mean, we knew this was happening. I was like, Lynn, come on the program. I want to talk to you about this.
Yeah, it's only been 24 hours, a little over 24 hours ago, but I've had reaction from industry.
And what have they said?
They are, they're plussed and recognized that and watched the evolution to get to this stage. And the support has been great.
Yeah.
We'll do a recap on our normal call. We have a group, we meet every Monday at 3:30 on a call, the remediation work group. And we're between 40 and 50 folks. And there's a core, a generally expanding contracting core of, a dozen companies. And we'll go over, how it all worked out, because those companies were in the room. And I don't know, I haven't gone through the count of the EPA representation, but it looked pretty good from the listing that I saw the other day.
I think, yeah. Well, the other point that you made about the relationship and getting the foot in the door early with the accomplishments and study and challenges ahead, Superfund study and all that, and working and building that relationship. I mean, the event that you had yesterday was the actual physical event, but there was a lot of work that was done with officials at EPA to design the event, build the event, get materials together, which was eye-opening and kind of thought-provoking on their end. So it was almost the greater benefit was in the process of getting to that point.
Right? Yeah, there's no question that that's the mark of this Reverse Industry Day. Professional Services Council was our partner in this with EPA, and reaching them, contacting them was just a cold call on my part back in August, or maybe it was September, I'm not real sure. We'd had internal discussions within the work group that something had to change. We couldn't just have industry days like industry days had always been, because it was just us, them, and really no dialogue. And we needed and have asked for a dialogue for, more than a year. Well, years.
Yeah.
And to get that dialogue, we had to break, the pattern. And the Reverse Industry Day was, we thought, a necessary exercise based on site work stoppages in this transition, slowdowns and such. So contacting Professional Services Council, they've done Reverse Industry Days, but the new twist here was, our twist on this was that we had to get especially in a virtual medium. We had to do something other than just one screen talking to the other screen. We had to get some integration, some dialogue established in the run-up. So our innovation on this was to make request and get EPA contract administrators or officers and program officers into the program as speakers and as moderators, opening speaker and closing speaker. And the opening was the program, and the closing was the acquisitions, highest level of the agency, highest level of the agent at the front on this as well. And in the middle was the contract officers who, RPMs and such, who were on the panels, and in the panel development presentation, they participated in review of drafts. And so the back and forth created changes, meeting of minds in ways that they hadn't had before. So that when we got to recording, because the whole event was to be, the panels were recorded, pre-recorded. The questions from the moderators were, they had anticipated a different level of understanding and questioning, and the presentations themselves changed as we got to recording, when recording was only 2 days ahead of the event itself. So yeah, there was a huge accomplishment in driving dialogue, which we wanted to get just in the process, the change in process that from the status quo process that Professional Services Council had done in the past. And they've done 30 or 40 of these. So this was a departure, and they're quite pleased with what happened here, and they want to continue. They want to be involved in our regular calls as we follow up and follow on actions out of this virtual reverse industry day.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, by putting EPA in the position of moderating, it gives them a stake in the event. It's not just, okay, we're going to show up to a regular industry day and, like you said, it's your basic one screen talking to the other in a virtual environment. You're actually integrating them into the program, developing questions, forcing them to actually take a look beneath, behind the curtain.
Well, and to tell the truth, they force our guys, our side of the equation to back up and reconsider as well. So it was a two-way exercise. I participated in many of those meetings of those panels in preparation for the recording. Not all, but most. And most of the time I was 100% listener. I wasn't always. I can't, there's only so much time in a day. But the point is, just to watch what was going on was an eye-opener. And I think people on the outside who are watching this, from the companies, by the way, many of them can see that benefit. And I know Public Services Council, Brad Saul, definitely saw it, and he wants to improve on it, leverage it, see it evolve here with us out of our event, because he's never seen that before.
Yeah. And organizationally, it's good because it takes us from the position of just putting together an event to, being part of the process, right? It's that relation. It is that relationship building. I mean, it is continuing that and deepening that, because you're able to kind of develop this and be part of offering solutions.
Yeah. And it is advocacy. And you think of regulatory advocacy, procurement advocacy, same sort of plane, actually.
Yeah.
And there is we connect up with legislative advocacy when it comes to appropriations or program reauthorization. And as we watch what could happen with the program, its expansion, procurement has to either support it,
Yep.
or it's a flop. And we'd like to be part of success, right? So
well, yeah,
that's
I mean, well, that's the other point, is that, it doesn't stop when the bill's passed. It doesn't. You can have you can get an authorization bill passed. You can be authorized to the hilt, and the appropriators might come through and give you everything that you want. Congratulations, the bill's passed and signed into law. Now the agency has to act against it. and has to fit that into its current model of acquisitions. And if you stop with what happens in Congress and you don't extend into the regulatory space, you're not going to be successful from an advocacy perspective. So this is a good example of us continuing on in that regulatory space.
And then I'll say another thing. Superfund remediation, the potential for growth here could be significant because of emerging contaminants such as PFAS. What may happen there, and others. And as that, that's our group. It's the remediation work group and emerging contaminants, because we recognize that potential exists, and it's a nice natural fit in the world of PFAS and whatever advocacy there is that we need to bring to bear on that issue.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on here, a lot of moving parts, and it's we got a lot of committed member companies, great talent within those companies, and it's a changing group. I mean, people are winding off and retiring, and new people are coming in, and same thing's happening in government. And it's nice to get an event like this that transfers learnings, experience. There's some very experienced people here. To a new set of owners and operators within the agency.
And especially in that space, my anecdote was always at TNI. It was John Rayfield, who was the staff director on the subcommittee for water when I was on the committee, and Chairman Schloesser had the gavel. And that man was a walking chat. You could cite water regulations pretty much chapter and verse. And, the amount of actual knowledge walking around in some of those areas is amazing, because the most arcane or hidden or just hard to understand regulation, someone who actually knows it that well can really translate it. And having that both outside and inside the agency is important. And then making sure that the people who move in and out of both sides of the coin, get some information sharing.
Yeah, well, one of the advantages here of doing the virtual, and it's recorded, so it's going to be, EPA was dedicated to putting it on YouTube. So, and it was another draw for the agency was continuing learning points, or such as professional development hours. So the idea here is we have something that's people can. It's an anchor point or a reference point that's available. It won't be lost.
Yeah. Well, that's important. It's also, at the end of the day, it's another example of ACEC getting in there, getting in the mix, staying in the mix, and helping to guide the discussion. And this is where it happens. I mean, what you see on the news every day is what happens out front in public, the debate on the Hill, the legislative wrangling. But the day-to-day is the regulatory process and the agency process, who are actually tasked with executing against the legislation that Congress passes. And if you're part of that process, then you're actually getting things done. Not to say anything about the direct advocacy of getting bills passed and getting language inserted, but being part of the regulatory process is extremely important. So an event like this is great. And I understand that other members of the GA team are looking at this as an example and trying to figure out how they might be able to do similar reverse industry days for their own constituencies, which is great. So
I think the strength here, though, is we had a long-standing and growing group of members who consistently stepped up and stepped in to contribute, and that's rare, I think.
That's very important, and it shows why being an active member and being part of the committee process is important, because it gets you in the process of setting events like this up. It gets you in the process of setting the agenda and helping to develop meetings like the Reverse Industry Day, where you get some great exchanges with the agencies that, your business has to work with.
Yeah, and this one was contemplated as a first, so we weren't going to go drilling into a bunch of details.
Yeah.
There were some details, but only in one area, an important area. But it was the upfront general, let's get the commitment to, communications, transparency, and consistency within the agency and across the regions. And let's keep the dialogue going and address, task order award time, reducing the delays, statements of work, forecasts. I mean, that's been opened up. We can talk about any of those details, but we had to lay the foundation for that further discussion, and we got a commitment at the highest levels within the agency to do that.
Yeah, so that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
More information about this event, you're gonna be putting that up on your committee on the committee section for energy and environment.
Water, energy, and environment.
Yeah, water, energy, and environment on acec.org in the member section of the site. And we'll be hosting hopefully more of these events in the future. And like you said, it's a first, but it's not the last. It's just it's a good example of the first time that we've done a reverse industry day. But I think that it's going to be other committees looking at this and saying, hey, this is a great idea. Let's see if we can do it with our particular agency that we work with. So hopefully it's the first of many to come.
That's the hope.
Well, I do appreciate your time in taking some time out today and telling us about the meeting. Again, you have 187 people in the meeting. That's a good turnout.
At one point, that's what I recall. In one, I don't know. It fluctuates.
It counts. If the audience hits that in a virtual meeting, it's 187.
Okay.
Well, Lynn, thank you so much for being part of the show, and I appreciate your work on this.
Take care.
And that has been the Government Affairs Update from ACEC. We'll see you again next time.
Build the tools for effective advocacy with ACEC's new online course, Effective Government Engagement at the Local, State, and Federal Levels. Learn from active practitioners in the fields of advocacy, communications, and lobbying on how you can create change and stand out in today's hectic policy environment. Register today for this 5-session online course beginning March 2nd. Learn more by visiting our website at acec.org.